How's it going, everyone? It's me, Jimmy Champagne from Deck Ready, and I have another different video for you guys today. My friend Bill Fairchild from the Nerd Nest was lucky and experienced enough to interview Valve. So I talked to him behind the scenes and I said, can I clip out a couple questions that I thought were interesting? I even fed a couple to him and he said, yeah, sure. So he's right here on the screen right now to talk about his Valve interview. It's an interview about an interview.
That's right. I couldn't be more meta. Like, it's interviews all the way down.
So for this video, I picked out 4 questions that really intrigued me for my channel, but it's a pretty long interview with a lot of great questions. So you should definitely go check it out. We did the collab feature, so you can just click his little channel icon below the video, but I will also link it in the description. And I'm assuming that you guys are going to want to watch it because I watched it and it was awesome. I have nothing other to say than it was awesome because I don't want to spoil it. Let's get into the first question though. So the first thing I was really happy to see my buddy Bill ask Valve was to settle the debate that we've had multiple times on our own channels and on the Nerd Nest podcast, which is the Steam controller a premium controller or a regular controller? So we'll roll the clip.
When I compare it to other controllers that are out on the market, I feel like it does have a lot of those premium features that you would find on the premium level of controllers. For me though, I mean, coming from a person who uses Steam Deck a lot, it's just a controller that makes sense. It's a controller that feels familiar and has all the inputs that I need in order to play all of the Steam games the way that I want to. So I don't know if it necessarily has to fit into one of those buckets.
Yeah, I think I personally think it kind of fits in between and kind of its own category because with premium controllers, you get a lot of additional things like you're saying, swappable thumbsticks or metal D-pad or metallized plastic components that make it feel and look just kind of more premium in general. And I think for this controller, we wanted to focus, like I had just said, on adding a lot of different ways to play and input value, right? Like we have the TMR thumbsticks, we have 2 trackpads, we have grip sense, we have 4 buttons in the back, all these things that give you a lot of flexibility, without trying to like really drive up the price and get to the pro price point by adding all those extra things. So it's kind of lives in between. And for people who want to experiment with new inputs, it's a good way to get started without having to pay, the top tier pro controller price point, I think.
Yeah. And a lot of our goals don't necessarily align with those of the other controllers that are out there. Like, for instance, we put a lot of emphasis on repairability, right? Yeah. Steve is an ME. He spent a lot of time making sure that this thing, you could take it apart and service it yourself, or maybe swap out buttons if you want to. We spent a lot of time thinking about battery life. We don't want people to be worried about having to charge this thing halfway through like a 5-hour gaming session. Yeah. We spent a lot of time thinking about ergonomics and making sure it fit into everyone's hands. We thought about familiarity for people coming with from Steam Deck. So those are the kind of priorities that we had. And that's not necessarily the same priorities as everyone else in the market.
I felt really vindicated. Did you? Because I forget where you came down on the podcast.
So I think most of the people on the podcast all kind of said the same thing that Steve did in the interview, where he said it's not a standard controller, but it's not really a premium controller either. It's some other thing. I can't remember. I think it was Russ. He had another word for it, and I wish I could remember it right now off the top of my head. But it is something in between, and I feel like because it's in between, it's priced right. At $99. What did you think?
I also came down in the exact same spot. It's so funny. We were just talking about how when you do interview style stuff like this, it just zaps out of your mind. That happens to me with podcasts. So if I was consistent with what I said on video, I was like, yeah, DualSense, $70, not a premium controller, just a regular controller. DualSense Edge is around $150. This is right in the middle. And feature wise, I think it's like a little bit over the line towards premium. So in my mind, $99 is the top end of what I wanted to pay. But realistically speaking, I could have seen them putting it between 100 and 120 and it's still flying out of the digital shelves, right? Because it is it has a lot of premium features, but the fit and finish is where it feels like a standard controller, I would say, right? Like it's plastic. There's not a lot of metal on it. Like even the thumbsticks, like if you get the 8-bit Do controller that has TMR sticks, they're like metal sticks. Whereas this, I have it right in front of me, are like plastic. They're like the Steam Deck. So yeah, I think they like not only know where this controller sits, like they kind of played it off like, oh, I don't know, but like they know where it sits. And I think they priced it pretty fair, honestly, like after using it.
There's definitely some complaints that I've seen people say where like the placement of the screws are underneath your fingers and like you can kind of feel them when you're holding it in your hands. That doesn't really bother me, but I can understand that. You can't swap out the sticks or the D-pad. Like these are things that you often see in premium controllers. And yeah, the plastic just feels like Steam Deck plastic. It doesn't feel premium in your hand, but the internal features are really impressive. And I think that is what makes it not a premium controller, not a standard controller, but whatever that sweet spot is in the middle.
Yeah, and you reminded me, one of my nitpicks related to the Steam controller is that even though it feels like a Steam Deck when you pull it out of the box or whatever, you pick it up, I use the limited edition OLED, so obviously the plastic doesn't match that, but someone brought up on X that it doesn't match the plastic finish of the Steam Deck LCD or OLED regular editions either. So I have a regular OLED and I went and checked. It's just slightly different.
I guess I just didn't notice.
Other than that, I think it does feel like a fairly premium controller. Like it feels like you're getting just a little more value for that $100 than I think you would otherwise on something like a DualSense. So the second question that you asked that really intrigued me was, is Valve a hardware company? And I was like immediately tuned in. I was like, what are they going to say? And I mean, I'll roll the clip. I was just going to explain what they said, but I'll roll the clip.
It's a good question. I mean, my personal answer to this, and I'm sure everyone has their own version of it, but like I see Valve as a company of three pillars. We make games, we run Steam, and we make hardware. But all of it is in service of helping our customers have fun playing games. So
yeah, we want to add value to the gaming community in whatever way we can, and hardware is a big part of that for people. And so we're happy to make hardware to help people.
That was kind of like the exact answer that I had in my head when you think of that question. Did you have a different reply in mind when you asked it?
Honestly, I didn't plan on asking that question. It's just it kind of came up in the moment where he was talking about hardware, and then I was like, in my head, I don't really think of them as a hardware company. I think of them as a storefront, and they're like, oh, we're also going to make hardware. And depending on, I mean, I wanted to ask how many they sold, but I know that they're not going to say that kind of, like, there's no way that they're going to answer that question. So I didn't want to waste my time on that. So, like, if I'm assuming how many they've sold, I'm going to guess it's somewhere in the 5 digits based on the size of how big a footprint Valve has in the industry as a whole. Tens of thousands of units is an extraordinarily small number. So I personally don't really think of them as a hardware company. The hardware that they put out is A, it's incredibly niche. B, it's spread out over a ridiculously long time span. Like the last time that they put out hardware was 5 years ago or 4 years ago. And then the time before that was it 11 years ago?
I think so.
That they did the first Steam controller? Yeah, so like 11 years ago. So like that's not a hardware company to me. That's somebody who's dabbling. And that's not a bad thing. You know, if that's what they want to do, and it seems to be working for me. I love the Steam Deck. I like the Steam controller a lot. I'm looking forward to the Steam machine and the Steam frame. It's okay if they're just dabblers. So
yeah, it was just nice to hear them articulate it though. It's like you don't ever,
absolutely.
they don't talk. Ever, just like they don't put out videos or anything. So just to hear that, like from someone who works there and is obviously, I know they don't have a traditional structure, but like quote unquote high up, it's like, okay, there is some sort of mental framework for what type of company they are. And I also wouldn't call them a hardware company, because if like tomorrow we woke up and Steam Deck was canceled, Steam machine was canceled, frame was canceled, and controller just like was unreleased, nothing would really change, right? Like they're still going to be fine just selling games. Like that's what they really exist to do. And I think they are cognizant of that with the way that they release this stuff by, you know, keeping it only through Steam, except for in Japan, and, you know, keeping it small and limited almost on purpose, because if you really go too hard into hardware, it can get out of control. And then they run the risk of like neglecting the Steam platform or like the Steam store.
I have a question for you though. Like Lawrence said, we have 3 pillars. It's all coming back to me now. He said we have our storefront. That's pillar number 1. Then we have hardware, and then pillar number 3 is making games. They don't make a whole lot of games. They like so few games. So do you consider them, you just said you don't consider them to be a hardware company. Their pace at which they release video games is, I would say, equally as sporadic as the pace at which they release hardware. So do you consider them to be a game company, or are they just simply a store that dabbles?
I'd consider them like a platform, right? Like, you know, the PlayStation Network or Xbox Live, where they're providing, you know, the networking services, they're providing the storefront, they're providing the controller input. Like it's kind of like a, I don't want to say parasite because that is a negative connotation, but like it is sort of parasitic on Windows, right? Without SteamOS, you need Windows kind of for up until now to really get the most out of Steam. So they're kind of like latched on to Steam, sort of like Venom, like, you know, like symbiotic relationship. But it's like I see it more as a platform. Yeah, they are releasing games, right? They did Counter-Strike 2. I know some people count that as like a relaunch, but Deadlock is like actively in development, and it's silently massive, like hundreds of thousands of people at any given time playing it. I just wish the game makers at Valve, this team that's pumping out games at a slow rate, would get off of the MOBA train, because I am so bad at MOBAs, and I like look from afar at like Dota 2. Even Deadlock is kind of like a mix between Overwatch and Dota 2.
It is.
And I see these games and they look so cool, but when I play them, there's like a mental barrier where I just hit a wall extremely early on, and I can't get past it. And then I've got these glory days, you know, as someone who grew up with these games, like Left 4 Dead 2 with my buddies, playing Half-Life 2. Half-Life Alyx was a good step in the right direction from a single player perspective, but there are blips across the map, and Indie has definitely taken that flag and ran with it. But I just played Half-Life 1 in January. I played the original game and the 2 expansions on my Steam Deck, and it's still so good. And I feel like it's just missing. Like that Valve flavor is good. And I feel like we're getting far enough away from those games where, you know, people are younger. I hate being this guy who's like, back in my day, but like younger people are never going to go back and play Half-Life, right? Or like a small number of them will. And I think it'd be beneficial.
No, they won't.
To have Valve kind of like come back in, show them how it's done, because their games, for all intents and purposes, work as reference points for other developers in a similar way that like Grand Theft Auto or Red Dead 2 work for open world games. You know, you need someone like at the forefront.
Yes, and we need Half-Life 3 right now.
Yes.
Right now. We need it right now.
Yeah. Now that I'm caught up on the story, I've never felt that we need that more. I'm like, I need to know what happens. Like I played Alyx, I played 2, I played episode 1 and 2. And like I played them a lot later than everyone else, but I get it. I'm like, these games are timeless. So the next question I'm pretty sure was one that I fed you, which is how far out did they plan this going in to the Steam Deck? And I'll roll the clip.
We're always thinking about things we can do in the future when it makes sense for the team and when we have bandwidth for it. We are actually a pretty small company, so like we only have limited ammunition. To spend. So a lot of it is like even Steam Deck. It was an idea that was around for a while, and it took all the stars aligning and APUs to get good enough with lower power envelopes, software to be there, SteamOS to get there for us to say, okay, now it makes sense to make Steam Deck. And then once Steam Deck was there, we're like, okay, great, we have SteamOS, we have this platform. Wouldn't it be cool if it was more powerful? Or wouldn't it be cool if I could play my Steam Deck while it's docked to my TV?
Yeah.
A lot of these things came out of that. I don't know if it was necessarily after Steam Deck that we first started thinking about these new things.
I feel like in some ways Steam Deck kind of invigorated the hardware initiative in some ways. Like it was highly successful. People love it. And it's like, okay, yeah, let's do this. Let's keep doing stuff like this. And so the Steam controller was one of the first things to come out of that as well, where it's like, okay, we have these dock Steam Decks. Let's solve that problem, right? People go to play on their couch and they have a controller and different inputs. The Steam controller just makes sense at that point.
Do you believe them that they just started with the Steam Deck and had no machinations in mind for future hardware like a controller or a machine?
I didn't feel like he really answered it. Basically, he said, well, we're always working on a bunch of different stuff. Like I imagine that they have 37 different projects and they're working on all of these things. And then at some points, some of them just get shut down and some of them get promoted to the next level. And right now it seems like that the Steam Deck, the Steam controller, Steam machine, and Steam frame, those are the things that, of those 34 things, and I'm just making up numbers here, but those are the things that did get promoted to the next level. Were they working on them all at the same time, or did they have a plan to release them in this order? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And my gut tells me that they were working on all of them kind of simultaneously, and like the different teams are working together and saying, well, I know that we're working on the controller and we're also working on deck. So in the old controller, let's get rid of this and for the deck, and then we'll do that same thing with the new controller too. I feel like it's less about A to B to C and more like wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey, if for Doctor Who reference.
I think you're right, where they were like, all right, let's get one thing out the door, and then it's just kind of been guiding them to the next product, at the same time, sometimes chronologically since. And it's not how my brain works, honestly. Like, I'm a more progression-based person, like goal, but it works for them clearly because they've released 2 pieces of hardware now. Well, 3 if you count the Steam Deck OLED. And 5 if you count the old Steam machine and controller. But that brings us to the last question, which is Valve kind of eating humble pie a little bit on the Steam controller launch.
We will probably have them for future hardware releases. I think that we were honestly surprised. Honestly, if we could do it over again, we would have started with Reservations. It was not expected. And we feel really bad that folks had a bad experience on launch day.
Yeah.
It was not our intent for everyone to be slamming the button over and over again, only to not be able to buy it. So I wish we had started with Reservations. We were honestly, we thought we had plenty of stock, and we even gave interviews, the 2 of us, saying we feel good about launch day. We have plenty of stock. We have like 2 or 3 times more inventory than we did for any of our other products at launch. But we underestimated the number of people who were interested in getting Steam controller on day 1, on minute 1, and that was a bad experience for a lot of folks.
Yeah,
I think it's cool that they were just like straight up, we thought we had enough, we didn't. For future hardware, they said there will probably be a reservation system, which is probably like a legal thing, I would guess. Like, you can't commit to something on camera, and then if something changes and they can't have a reservation system, then they got to worry about it. But 99% sure there's going to be a reservation system for both frame and machine. Like, why not?
I love that they were like, yeah, we felt bad that it did not work the way that the store, like, that we ran out. And then they said, Lawrence said, me and like both of us had gone on multiple interviews and said, we got plenty. So clearly they very much misunderstood how many people wanted it. The thing that drives me crazy is I don't understand why they didn't see this coming, especially because with the Steam Deck, when that came out, they basically had a reservation system. But at the same time, did they only have that reservation system because the supplies were so constrained? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, especially after launching the first Steam Deck, I was kind of bummed out with the limited one that it came out at the exact same time as the regular OLED. It's a good problem to have for them, right? Like, where they have an idea in mind, probably through a lot of back-end data and metrics of how many people are going to want this stuff, and then more show up. That's a great problem to have. But, you can only go through that so many times before it's like, I don't care how small of a company you are, you got to figure it out. So it sucks that some people weren't able to get it at launch, but with how quickly they turned around the reservation system, and in your video they said by the end of this week, so probably after this video or before this video goes up, the second wave will be shipping out. They kind of recovered. Like I don't think it's as big of a deal anymore as I've seen online.
That's right. I really hope that when Steam Machine and Steam Frame are getting ready to launch, just a week before, put a button on the store that says add to cart. And then you'll know if there's going to be a problem or not. And if there's not going to be a problem, great. But chances are there will be, because, you know, we've seen those shipment analysis from like, sadly it's Bradley, on how many probably have come in or whatever. And it's like I said, it's in the tens of thousands. It's not in the hundreds of thousands. It's not in the millions. This is going to be a very limited, you know, you talked about the console fans that are like the ride or die, and they're sort of like arguing about teraflops. The thing that I think a lot of them don't understand is it doesn't matter how many that Valve sells, because it just plays PC games. When a new console comes out, if a new console doesn't sell, that's horrible, because it only plays those games. And if the people who bought that system are the only ones who bought that system, well, then the game companies are going to be like, I'm not making anything for that device, because that device doesn't have wallets that I can pull money from.
All right, Bill, where can people find you? What do you want to promote here? You've got an open mic to promote anything you want.
Well, like Jimmy said before, if you click on that subscribe button down below, it's going to show his channel where you can subscribe and turn on all notifications for him. But you'll also see mine down there because of the collaboration feature on YouTube. On my YouTube channel, I do gaming news, and like I'll do videos of my just me. But then I also every week have a podcast where me and a bunch of my friends get together and we talk about the video game news of the week. And it's like one of my favorite parts of the week.
Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate this. I have to edit it now, though.
That's a lot of work. Stay rad, Jimmy.